Mel Gibson just exposed one of the biggest Hollywood scandals of the decade, involving 5 stars. It will make you question everything you thought you knew about the business, surprising claims, supernatural encounters, and trade secrets that A-listers know about never make it to the public. The story gets stranger with each new revelation, and by the end you'll wonder if your favorite stars are really who they say they are. Who are these stage actors? What did they do to deserve this? Let's find out which 5 Hollywood stars Gibson can't stand. 5th on the list is Winona Ryder. There is always a lot of talk and secrets in Hollywood, but every once in a while a story comes out that feels more important than the rest. In June 2010, GQ published an interview that sent chills through the movie business. Winona Ryder, who was popular in films in the late 1980s and early 1990s, talked about a scary event she said she had with Mel Gibson many years before. "I didn't say this in a casual or offhand way. It was a clear memory of Gibson's cruel and unfair actions that has followed him around for decades." Ryder says that was sometime in the middle of the 1990s. Both stars were at the height of their fame at a party in Los Angeles. Ryder was already well known in pop culture after Beetlejuice came out in 1988. Truth Bites came out in 1994, and Edward Scissorhands in 1990. Gibson, on the other hand, wasn't just famous. He was famous all over the world for the Lethal Weapon films and his 1995 Oscar-winning epic Braveheart. Behind the glittering success, Ryder remembered a time when a much darker side came out. She said that Gibson turned to her in the evening and called her a oven dodger, a horrible term for Jewish people who died in the Holocaust. Ryder couldn't say a word because his father, Michael Horowitz, is Jewish. She remembered that the room had frozen. Some guests looked really scared. This wasn't a joke for Ryder, a painful reminder of the 6 million Jews who died in Nazi death camps from 1941 to 1945. The wound was deep and heavy with history. "They were still being mean," she said. She came with a close gay friend. She also said that Gibson then turned his attention to him and made fun of AIDS. It was the 1990s, and the epidemic had already done a lot of damage in Los Angeles, New York, and San Francisco. In the United States, more than 50,000 people died each year from AIDS by 1995. Hearing those words from one of Hollywood's biggest stars was more than just upsetting for Ryder. It came as a huge surprise. She told GQ that those words had been bothering her for a long time after that night. They stuck with her everywhere, making her feel even worse about how Hollywood often ignored racism and sexism. She told the magazine that it was shocking and mean. Ryder remembered that Gibson later tried to play the whole thing off as a joke, but she didn't find it funny at all. Gibson flatly denied what Ryder said. His lawyers said the conversation never happened, but Gibson himself said that if Ryder felt insulted, he had tried to say sorry. Even so, the denial didn't take away the dark cloud that was over him. A lot of critics said that his past made her story more believable. It wasn't hard to find that past. Gibson was caught driving drunk in Malibu in July 2006. He reportedly lost it when he was being arrested and yelled that Jews were to blame for all the wars in the world, according to the official police report. The comment that made headlines cemented his reputation as someone who can say hurtful things. He said sorry, but it didn't help fix things. Jewish groups like the Anti-Defamation League were very critical of his movie The Passion of the Christ even earlier in 2004. They said it promoted anti-Semitic stereotypes. So when Ryder's story came out in 2010, it didn't seem like a single accusation. A lot of people saw it as another part of a worrying pattern. The backlash happened right away. Every part of her claim was broken down by talk shows, newspapers, and online forums. Some people wondered why she hadn't said anything for so long. Some people wondered if Gibson was being smeared too much. The fact that Ryder told the story, though, gave it real weight. She never liked being in trouble. In fact, Ryder had withdrawn from the Hollywood spotlight and kept her private life very quiet for years after her well-known shoplifting arrest in Beverly Hills in 2001. She later said that retreat made her afraid to speak out. Because of this, the story she chose to tell had extra weight. It wasn't just an insult. It showed something much more important. Ryder grew up in a home where Jewish history and identity were very important. Michael Horowitz, her counterculture writer and archaic conservative father, taught her a strong sense of right and wrong and duty. She said that the slur that night made her feel like someone was attacking not only the memories of her family but also who she was. After many years, she said it wasn't just a bad joke. It got to the heart of who I am. Even after decades, the dispute is still not over. Gibson still says that Ryder's memory is false, but Ryder stands by it. It's not just a fight between two famous people that stays with you. It's also a reminder of how words said in a split second can hurt for years, and an apology can't take away that pain. The story now moves on to a stranger person. Christopher Walken comes in at number 4. Hollywood has always been a place where rumors and facts mix, but every once in a while a story comes out that seems almost too good to be true. In one story, Mel Gibson and Christopher Walken are linked even though they are famous for very different things. Gibson was the best leading man of his time. He was a huge draw at the box office and a creative powerhouse. Walken, on the other hand, was the mystery of his time, a performer whose very presence seemed to scare people. What happened when they supposedly ran into each other in New York in the early 1990s has become one of Hollywood's strangest whispers, a story that mixes the strange and the creepy. Gibson was 36 years old and at the top of his game by 1992. Lethal Weapon 3 had just broken all kinds of records at the box office, making more than $320 million around the world. Studios rushed to get Gibson to work on new projects, but he was already planning the historical epic that would become Braveheart 3 years later. At that point, he became interested in making a dark thriller. The movie needed an actor who could make people feel scared and threatened without saying a word. Christopher Walken had already won an Oscar for his role in The Deer Hunter in 1978 and was known as Hollywood's scariest supporting actor. His roles in King of New York 1990 and Batman Returns 1992 made him seem even creepier, almost like a ghost. Directors liked how strange he was, how hypnotic his rhythm was, and how unpredictable his delivery was. He often seemed less like an actor and more like a force on screen to the people who saw him. Someone who seemed to be there but not really of this world. People who knew Gibson at the time say that they set up a meeting at the Peninsula Hotel on Fifth Avenue in Manhattan. The meeting started with drinks and the usual small talk about roles and characters while the skyline stretched out in front of them. But quickly, what began as business turned into the strange, leaving Gibson deeply uneasy. Later, one of Gibson's helpers remembered the first strange thing. It looked like Walken didn't walk across the roof like everyone else. Years later, the assistant was said to have said it felt like his feet weren't fully touching the ground. He wasn't floating, but the way he moved felt strange. Gibson was raised in a strict Catholic family and is very religious. He felt a chill go through him right away. After that, the talk began. Instead of talking about contracts or movie roles, Walken is said to have gone into a scary rant about torture devices from the past. He talked in great detail about the Iron Maiden, the rack and the wheel, which were instruments used during the Spanish Inquisition and in medieval Europe. People who saw him said he didn't talk like a teacher. It sounded almost happy, like he was enjoying describing how cruel it was. Gibson looked at his assistant, who later said he wanted to leave but couldn't because the scene was so strange. Gibson looked across the street and saw a neon sign for a nightclub as Walken went on. The sign flickered all of a sudden, and Gibson later said that the lights made the famous number 666 from the Book of Revelation. Right then, Walken was talking about a punishment that involved fire and long, painful torture. The timing unnerved Gibson so profoundly that he could barely focus on anything else. One longtime friend later said Mel thought he was staring at pure evil. He said it wasn't just creepy, it felt spiritual, like something was speaking through Walken. For a man whose faith shaped almost all of his big decisions, the meeting on the rooftop seemed like a bad sign. The meeting ended quickly. Gibson got up, ended the conversation, and left the hotel looking very shaky. In his suite that night, he told his assistant that Walken would never be in his movie. It was him who said, "We just met the Antichrist." Even though it was meant as a joke, the people there didn't find his tone very funny. A lot of the time, Gibson saw things through a spiritual lens and saw coincidences as messages from God. The story stuck around mostly because of Walken. His reputation as Hollywood's scariest ghost only added to the story. His strange rhythm, piercing eyes, and private life made the story seem very real. By the time Braveheart came out in 1995 and won Gibson 2 Oscars, Walken had already made a name for himself as one of the most unpredictable actors in the business. They never worked together, and Walken has never said anything about the rumor. Friends who know him well say it's not true and call him strange but not dangerous. Still, his silence has made things even more mysterious. The meeting left a mark on Gibson that can't be erased. He never thought about walking for another part. And when he told close friends about that night years later, he always came back to the same haunting line. "I saw something that wasn't supposed to be there." Gibson was shaken up by his encounter with Walken on the roof, but his problems with Pedro Pascal have much more mundane roots. Third place goes to Pedro Pascal. Gibson thinks that Pedro Pascal is a perfect example of everything that is wrong with Hollywood's focus on politics over performance. Pascal was born in Santiago, Chile, on April 2, 1975. In the last 10 years he has become one of the most recognizable faces in the streaming era. In 2014, his big break came when he played Oberyn Martell on HBO's Game of Thrones. He was in only 7 episodes, but his magnetic presence made him a fan favorite right away. By 2019, he had landed the lead role in Disney's The Mandalorian, which was the show that launched Disney Plus and quickly became one of the most watched shows in the world. HBO cast him as Joel Miller in The Last of Us in January 2023. The show was based on a popular video game and had 4.7 million viewers on its first night, which was the network's second biggest debut in over a decade. On the surface, Pascal is a great example of modern success. Loved by fans, always popular online, and always being offered new roles. Gibson is still not impressed, though. The things he says are harsh. It seems like he always plays the same guy. It doesn't matter if the helmet is on or off, it's just one note. Gibson thinks Pascal has built a brand instead of getting better at a craft. Gibson always sees the same tough protector, whether he's Den Jiren leading a child across galaxies, or Joel leading a teen through a broken America. A friend said he told them it was the same trick over and over. Range is what Hollywood calls it. I call it being lazy. Gibson is most upset about how the entertainment business treats Pascal, not how well he acts. Pascal has made a second name for himself as a political voice on social media, which is different from generations past who kept their personal lives separate. His Twitter account has more than 3 million followers, and he often posts political comments there. In June 2020, when the Black Lives Matter protests were at their peak after George Floyd's death, Pascal posted in support of the protesters and against systemic racism. He combined his work as an artist with his activism in a way that Gibson thought took away from his craft. The next year, Pascal caused a stir when he said that children detained by the U.S. government as migrants were like Jewish children in Nazi concentration camps. His name stayed in the news because of the post, which got both praise and anger. For Gibson, this is the exact problem. He says Pascal gets billion-dollar franchises because he agrees with Hollywood's very liberal politics, not because he is a good actor. Gibson is said to have said in private, "It's not about whether he can act, it's about what he says." This criticism is part of a bigger argument going on in the industry. Hollywood has always been political, but social media has made the trend stronger. An actor's reputation can grow faster with just one tweet than with years of hard work. Gibson and other veterans who grew up in the 1980s, when longevity and ticket sales were the only ways to measure a career, see this new reality as an insult to the craft. The numbers make him even more angry. According to Parrot Analytics, The Mandalorian became the most watched streaming show in the world in 2020, with over 14 times as many viewers as the average show. Later, 30 million people watched each episode of The Last of Us across all platforms, making Pascal HBO's newest crown jewel. Still, critics were divided. Some people liked Pascal's quiet intensity, while others pointed out how similar he was in all of his roles. The Guardian wrote in February 2023 that Joel was like the reluctant father figure he has been for years. Critical doubts and a lot of support from the studio make Gibson feel like this disconnect is an insult to actors who work hard to change. In private, he has compared Pascal to actors like Daniel Day-Lewis and Philip Seymour Hoffman, who were so good at their roles that they disappeared into them. Gibson is said to have said those guys disappeared. People call Pascal a genius even though all he does is tweet in between takes. Pascal's supporters don't agree, saying that his strength is that he is always the same. In a world full of franchises and shared universes, it's nice to know what to expect. Fans know what to expect, and studios know that people will stick with him because of his name. That level of predictability is very valuable for streaming services that are competing for viewers. Still, Gibson's dislike for them doesn't change. He thinks that casting today is based more on fitting in with society than on telling a story. He once said, "They're looking for activists, not actors." Gibson thinks this change has turned Hollywood into a hollow shell where slogans have replaced real craft. Whether you agree with him or not, he doesn't dislike Pascal so much for Pascal himself as for what he stands for, an industry that values politics and public image more than talent. Gibson has worked hard for decades to be respected as an actor and a director, so this truth hurts him deeply. This review of Pascal may seem harsh, but it's nothing compared to how upset he was when a man he used to look up to, a real Hollywood legend, let him down. Robert Darrow is number 2. Gibson was still making his way in the late 1970s and early 1980s. After coming back from Australia, he shocked people with George Miller's Mad Max in 1979 and Gallipoli in 1981. When asked about his influences at this time, Gibson often said Robert Darrow. He thought Darrow was the best example of method acting as taught by teachers such as Lee Strasberg and Stella Adler, Travis Bickle in Taxi Driver 1976, Michael Vonsky in The Deer Hunter 1978, and Jake LaMotte in Raging Bull 1980 were some of the best performances ever. In 1981, Darrow won the Academy Award for Best Actor for that last part. More than 60 pounds were gained and lost over the years so that he could fully inhabit LaMotta. When Gibson was young, it was exciting to watch Darrow work. In the mid-1980s, he is said to have told a friend, "That's what acting should be." Gibson chose to work on Shakespeare's Hamlet with Franco Zeffirelli in 1990, in part because of the standard Darrow had set. But Gibson was most impressed by things other than the roles. It was Darrow's quiet. During those years, Darrow was known for being very private. He rarely gave interviews, and when he did, they were short, and he didn't try to promote himself. Darrow had a clear way of thinking. The performance should be more important than the performer. Gibson thought that discipline took him beyond being a star. He knew how to do things well, but Gibson saw a difference in the early 2000s. Darrow talked about politics more and more instead of letting his work speak for itself. He was against the Iraq War in 2003. By 2011, he made a joke at a White House event about the idea of a white First Lady coming after Michelle Obama. By the 2016 election, Darrow was one of the loudest celebrities who didn't like Trump. A few weeks before the election, in October of that year, he was in a video calling Trump a dog, a pig and a con artist. Millions of people watched the clip, which was uncensored and full of anger. At the Tony Awards in New York, 2 years later, he began his speech by saying, "I'm going to say one thing. Trump asterisk, asterisk, asterisk." The crowd went wild and gave him a standing ovation, and the comment was all over the news for days. Gibson said that seeing this was like seeing a temple fall down. The person who wrote Raging Bull is now going on political rants late at night. In 2019, he reportedly told a close friend that angry rant from Tony to Gibson was a sign of everything that was wrong with Hollywood. Politics and applause lines got in the way of real art.